we have a crisis in the world, tremendous crisis, and also crisis in our consciousness, in us. I see the urgency of change, radical revolution, mutation in the mind. I see it. It is necessary. There is complete quietness of the mind, and that which is silent has vast space. Only then that which is nameless comes into being.
This is Urgency of Change, the Krishnamurti podcast. A mind that is not clear, a mind that is confused, will inevitably choose. But for a mind that sees very clearly, there is no choice at all. Hello and welcome to episode 240 of Urgency of Change. Each episode of the Krishnamurti podcast features carefully selected extracts from the archives. Their aim is to represent different aspects of Krishnamurti's radical approach to many of the issues and questions we all face in our lives. This week's theme is choice. Upcoming themes are space, memory, and care. This is a podcast from Krishnamurti Foundation Trust, based at Brockwood Park in the UK, which is also home to the Krishnamurti Centre. The centre offers a variety of group retreats from February to December, including for young adults. The atmosphere is one of openness and friendliness, with a sense of freedom to inquire with others and alone. Please visit krishnamurticentre.org.uk for more information. You can also find our regular Krishnamurti quotes and videos on Instagram, TikTok and Facebook at Krishnamurti Foundation Trust. If you enjoy the podcast, please leave a review or rating on your podcast app. This helps our visibility. This week's episode on choice has 3 sections. This first extract is from Krishnamurti's 4th talk in New Delhi 1972 and is titled Choice Implies Duality and Confusion.
There are 2 things, it seems to me, that are very important to understand. Choice and will. Because all our life, our daily life, is based on these 2 principles. Choice, discernment, choosing between this and that, between the false and the true, the unessential, the essential, the important and unimportant. And the whole structure of will, the will to do, the determination, the assertive pursuit. These 2 principles one has to go into and really understand it, not verbally, but actually. Why do we choose at all? Because in choice, there is always conflict. Haven't you noticed it? Choice implies duality between this and that. And is there duality? Or there is only the fact and not its opposite. A great many books and philosophies and ideas have been written about and talked about this question of duality. And the conflict between the two dualities. Now I question whether there is duality at all, or only what is. And it is only when we do not know how to deal, how to go beyond what is, then we hope by having its opposite, we might use the opposite to overcome what is. Bene? You're following all this? It is, when there is violence, its opposite is non-violence. Peace, a state of mind in which there is no violence at all. The fact is violence. What is violence. The other, the ideal of a mind that has no violence, is non-existent, is an abstraction, and therefore has no validity. What has validity, the fact, what is violence. And if the mind knows how to go beyond it, then the opposite doesn't exist at all. You follow? So, conflict comes totally to an end. Because we are caught in the opposites. The like and the dislike, love and hate, jealousy and if this whole corridor of opposites. And the opposites always bring conflict. I would like to do that, but I have no will to do it. I would like to act this way, but I can't. So, one must clearly see this fact that there is only what is, and not its opposite. There is only violence. The ideal is fiction, invented or supported by a tradition, speculation, and abstraction. It has no truth. But what has truth is what is. When you see that very clearly, there is no choice. So, a mind that is not clear always chooses. A mind that's confused will inevitably choose. But a mind that sees very clearly, there is no choice at all. So, clarity is not the opposite of what is. The understanding of what is and going beyond it brings clarity. Please, don't let me talk to myself. That's no fun at all. I can do it in my room. But we are doing it together, sharing it. And I really mean sharing it. Because The world is in such a mess, so much corruption, such deceit, dishonesty. There must be deep psychological revolution. And when one feels the urgency of it, and that very urgency brings about a sharing together. So please, we are sharing this thing together as we go along. Now, not tomorrow, not when you go home, but now, as we are sitting there talking over together this question of what is action, then in the investigation of it, we are journeying together. You know, when we do things together, there is great vitality. There is great sense of unity. There is great beauty in doing things together, which is really cooperation. Not round an idea or round a leader or an ideal, but together in understanding this whole problem of existence, which is very complex. And because of its very complexity, one must come to it with simplicity. So, where there is choice, there must be confusion. A mind that sees very clearly has no choice. It acts. It is the mind that chooses, that doesn't act. The action out of that choice must lead inevitably to confusion. If I know clearly what to do, there is no duality in that. I see it very clearly. And how is a mind that does not see clearly, that lives in disorder, how is it to extricate itself out of this disorder, out of this confusion? You're following all this? Because order can only come when we understand disorder. Right? Not a blueprint and the acceptance of a pattern of what is order. Because we live in disorder. Our minds are confused, contradictory, elated and depressed, unhappy, anxious, and all the rest of it. That is disorder. And we do not know how to bring order in that. Therefore, we externalize order, a design, a plan, a pattern of order, and try to live according to that order. Whereas, if you are aware of the disorder, how disorder arises, see the complexity of disorder, then out of that disorder comes order, without planning, without contriving, imagining. Is this clear? So what is disorder? That's our only concern. And in the understanding of that, the extraordinary mathematical sense of order comes. Why is there disorder in our life? I wonder if you have ever asked that question of yourself. Disorder implies conflict, doesn't it? You know, a neurotic is not in conflict. Do you understand? The man who is unbalanced, who identifies himself completely with an idea, he has no conflict. He has no disorder. He is that. Whereas the man who is fairly balanced, and I'm afraid most of us are neurotic, we are fairly balanced. To such a man, there is choice. What to do? There is this contradictory, opposing desires. And that brings confusion. And our education, the way we live, all the fears, all that is disorder. Can the mind observe this disorder in our life? Not try to change disorder, because if you try to change disorder, you're producing more disorder. Whereas if you observe disorder, just to be attentive, without any plan, without any coercion, without any desire to change it, then in that very understanding, in that very observation of that confusion comes order. Because your mind is looking at disorder with no choice. It's only looking at what is. Therefore, looking at what is, the mind can go beyond it. It is only when you have its opposite that conflict begins. You understand all this? We are going together in this. We are moving together. Right. So, when you see choice, when you have to choose, you are choosing out of confusion, out of disorder. And choice implies duality. And duality is an escape from what is. And if you remain with what is, look at what is without its opposite. And to look at that, you need energy. Right? Look, when you have an opposite, that the pursuit of the opposite is wastage of energy. You are attached to some person, to some idea, to some belief, to some tradition. And being attached and not being able to go beyond it, fighting attachment, you think you will be free of attachment by the pursuit of non-attachment. Therefore you have a conflict there. You are attached and you are pursuing non-attachment. That is disorder. That is waste of energy. Whereas, if you observed attachment, then because you are not escaping, you have the energy to look. You have all that energy to go beyond what is. You're following this? So this is very important. Because we spend our days and our nights and our years in conflict, in struggle. And is there a way of living a life in which there is not a breath of struggle, conflict? Which doesn't mean you vegetate or go to sleep, but in which there is not a sense at any time of conflict, confusion, disorder. So if that is very clear, that to go beyond what is, you need all the energy which is dissipated in the conflict of the opposite. Don't repeat it after me. Don't learn that as a slogan. The other day, somebody came to see me and he said, I've learned now that thought divides. You understand? You just learnt it. So don't learn this slogan and don't repeat it. See the truth of it. To see the truth of it, you must have a mind that is willing, eager, passionate to find out whether it is possible to live a life without a sense of conflict at any time. That is the way to live in peace. The other factor is, by which we live, is the activity of will. You will see presently that choice and will go together. To us, will, that is to do, I will, and I must not, is a form of resistance. And where there is resistance, there must be conflict. Right? If you are a traditionalist, as you are, most of you are, what is being said, you will instinctively oppose. Because you are conditioned to accept duality. You are conditioned to function with will. And when you hear a person saying, will is resistance, will is conflict, will brings about disorder, you will instinctively resist it. You'll ask, is it possible to live a life without will? You understand my question? And we are going to show you that it is possible to live without will. Because when you exercise will, that is, the summation of desire, will is the essence of desire. I will do it. It must be done, or I will not do it. Both the positive assertion and the negative denial is a form of will. And all our action is based on that. I will succeed in this world. I must be noble. You know, all the things that is involved in the action of will. Have you ever watched the operation of will in yourself? And have you ever gone into this question, what is the necessity of will at all? When you see something very clearly, is there an action of will? You understand my question? Look, sir, will as an act is a pattern of conformity. Conformity to a pattern, to an ideal, to a dictum. So, when you understand the whole structure of conformity, then is there an act of will at all? When you see something very clearly, when you see danger, physical danger, you act, don't you? Instantly. There is no act of will there. Your nervous response is immediate. Right? Now, is there an action in which will doesn't exist at all? Will is time. I will do that. That it demands time. And therefore, will is not action in the present. It's always in the future. So will implies contradiction. Right? So, meditation in daily life is action in which there is neither choice nor will. Because you see things very clearly. Right? Now, what does it mean to see clearly? how to observe yourself or a cloud or your neighbor clearly. Not only visually, but with clarity of a mind that is unconfused, with a clarity of mind that has no shadow.
The second extract is from the third talk in Saanen 1965 and is titled Choice and the Will to Change.
I think it is very important that we should change. Not outwardly, because outwardly there are a great many pressures, influences, political, scientific, economic pressures going on all the time, and to which we are responding consciously or unconsciously, resisting or flowing with it. That I do not call change at all. Mere outward adjustment to a social pattern, however revolutionary, however changeable it is. Mere adjustment to a social outward pattern is not change. Because one has to adjust oneself, or otherwise you are destroyed. So we are compelled either to conform or adjust or accept the situation, the outward changes, and live with them. All such forms of pressure to change outwardly has no deep, significant change inwardly. It may superficially influence, but fundamentally it does not bring about a change in oneself. That's obvious. We don't have to labor that point. So we have to consider what it is that changes and what we mean, what that word imply fundamentally. As we said, each one of us has an image of oneself, pleasurable or painful, flattering or neurotic. Please follow through with me. Observe your own image and become conscious of it. Don't say my image is perfect. It is my nature to have such marvelous image. I was born with it. I cannot change it. It's part of me. Which is all sheer nonsense. Human nature can be changed radically, deeply, fundamentally. There is no such thing as an image which is natural. So please be aware of it. Then the next step is choice. From that image you choose. You choose what you will be or what you will not be according to that image. That image dictates your activities. Inwardly, though outwardly you may conform, going to the office and family and all the rest of it, but inwardly, that image dictates what your activities are. your way of thinking, your way of feeling, your motives, your energy, your drive. And where there is the exercise of choice, there is the will in action. There. I have an image about myself, and that image helps to bring about various forms of choice, and to carry out that choice in action is will. Then you're following this? Because for us, will in action is necessary. We don't know any other action. We only know action as will. I will and I will not. This is pleasurable and I will pursue. This is not pleasurable and I will avoid it. Please observe yourself. Don't merely listen to me. Because I want to go into this very deeply if I can. So we know only action as will. And from that will, there is so-called virtue. I will be this and I will not be that. Our virtue, our morality, our ethics are based on choice of will in action. Right so far? Please don't agree with me. Don't accept what I'm saying or deny, but see what is actually taking place in each one of us. So, our morality is action of will based on choice, behind which there is the image. Right? Now, any change is within that pattern. Any change that we consciously bring about is within that pattern. And so our action is always in contradiction. When action is based on choice and will, it must be in contradiction. Because behind it there is the image of ourselves as we should like to be, either neurotic or fanciful or pleasurable or painful. And according to that, we act, and that action must constantly vary, contradict. You cannot follow one's steady action because life won't admit it. So there is always action in contradiction. If that's not clear, we will discuss it a little further, a little later on. And we see that order is necessary. Order, not only outwardly, but inwardly. Not only order in the room in which you live, outwardly, but also order inwardly. And order is virtue, obviously. But that order cannot be brought about by will. Because will in action is immoral, because in it there is contradiction, there is disorder. Look, let me put it on the other way. I see it's rather not clear. I see I must have order in myself. As I have outwardly, in the room I live, I must have some cleanliness, order, neatness, tidiness, so that it doesn't disturb. I have not only to be sensitive to the outward things, also I must be sensitive inwardly. If there is disorder, confusion outwardly, then sensitivity is not possible. In the same way, inwardly, I must have great order to be greatly sensitive. Disorder inwardly creates confusion, contradiction, makes the mind constantly agonizing, in travail, in misery. So I must have order. But I see that order cannot be brought about by will. Because will is resistance. If I say I will create order, that order I create is according to the pattern which thought has established, according to the image which it has. Right? But I must have order. And order is virtue. Not the virtue of society, morality, of social behavior and all that. I'm not talking of that. That's no virtue at all. That's immoral. The social morality is no morality at all. But I'm talking of an order inwardly. And how am I to bring it about? Please see the problem. I have an image, and I choose what kind of order I want, and according to that choice, I exercise my will to bring about that order. Right? But I see that is not order. That's merely creating in myself a fortress of resistance. And therefore it's not order. So I must find out a way to bring about order in which there is no choice. Right? Because I see choice in any form is the action of will, or choice brings about will. depending on the image, the background, the conclusion, the experience, the ideas that I have. Am I making myself clear? Making myself clear, not that you understand what I am saying. Because if you understand what I am saying and it is very clear, then it will be clear to you. So, I see there must be order, which is not resistance, which is not isolation, which is not an escape. And I see that order must come about through a choiceless state in which no will as resistance operates. Because the order I have created before in me and outwardly is disorder. Outwardly, I may conform to all the social pattern and norm. That is, outwardly, I am ambitious, greedy, envious, competitive. And that creates terrible disorder in the world. And inwardly, I want peace, I want quiet, I want serenity, security. And there too, because my desire is to find pleasure, and that creates disorder too. So I see all my action inwardly as well as outwardly is productive of disorder. Though outwardly it may be moral, ethical, and all the rest of that nonsense, but it is disorder. So, I see this very clearly, that any form of choice and the exercise of will does breed resistance and therefore disorder based on pleasure. So is there another action which is not derived from choice or will? Don't say, how am I to act without will? How am I to live in this world without choice? Everything I do is based on choice. Whether I choose this color of trouser or do everything is based on choice. And if if there is to be no choice and therefore no exercise of will, then I shall just float. There'll be no stability, there'll be no anchorage. Right? So that's our natural reaction, isn't it? If I don't exercise will, what shall I do? You will put that question only when you don't see the implication of the whole of the activity of will. once you understand this whole question of will, which is essentially based on pleasure and resistance, however much it may bring about order, which is essentially disorder, when once you understand this whole process of will, then you won't touch it, you won't go near it. Because essentially you want order. So, when we understand the nature of will, which is based on pleasure and resistance of pain, not on fact, but on pleasure. I wonder if you're understanding. Are you following me? Yes, you're not my disciples, don't follow me that way. But we are moving together in the discovery of something. Because we're together trying to find a new way of living. There is a new way of living. You must, that's a natural, essential demand of every intelligent human being, to find a new way of life. Not to be tortured, not to be in agony, not to have these dreadful fears, anxieties, confusion and misery. There must be a new way. And to find the new way, you must discard the old completely. Reject the whole. And you cannot reject it without understanding it. You can't just say, well, I won't have it that way. It means it has no meaning. But if you understand what is implied in the whole pattern of the old system of thought, action, and will and choice, then naturally it drops away. But you see, unfortunately, most of us are very lazy. Physically as well as inwardly. Inwardly we are lazy inside the skin. Because all this demands a great deal of going into, searching out, breaking down, not accepting, not living with a tremendous energy to find out. And most of us don't want to do that. We'd rather live happily in an erotic state of our image, or unhappily hoping that the image will be changed by some circumstances to bring about a happy new image. So, having rejected this whole structure of image, choice, will based on pleasure and discarding pain, please understand what we're talking about, pleasure and pain. One must resist physical pain, but the fear of being painful inside. You understand? Therefore, we're not facing facts, but only looking at everything through the eyes of pleasure, or wanting pleasure. So when one understands this whole thing, then what is action without will? You understand? Then what is change? I do not know if you have not noticed that when you consciously change, consciously, say, I will change. I will not smoke, I will not drink, I will not do this, I will not do that. Deliberately set about to bring about a change in yourself. Don't you find that in that deliberate change there is a great deal of resistance and waste of energy? Because you are battling with the old habits, with the old patterns of thought, resisting, hoping to find a new way. This is a quite familiar pattern, isn't it? That where there is a deliberate choice, deliberate intention to bring about a change, there is not only resistance but a waste of energy. And therefore there is no change at all. I wonder if you're getting all this. Is this somewhat clear so far? So, I see that in myself, that where there is a deliberate action to bring about a change, I see it is no change at all but waste of energy. Therefore I see that change can only take place when there is no conscious effort to change. My gosh. Change must take place without you are deliberately wanting change. And that comes about when you understand the whole picture. The whole picture of the image, how it has been created, image based on pleasure, and the avoidance of pain inwardly, and from that image choosing, exercising the will and action. This pattern we repeat over and over again. And within that field of that pattern, we want change. And any change is still a resistance, a still waste of energy. And therefore, it is not change at all. Change means explosion. And to explode, you need energy. And therefore, to have energy, there must be no resistance. And that means a change in which thought has not entered at all as will. So, like virtue that is cultivated ceases to be a virtue. Right? When I deliberately set about to be humble, when I'm full of vanity, and I practice virtue of humility every day, it has no meaning. But to explode vanity without the exercise of will, therefore, unconsciously, which means complete energy with which I look at that quality which I call vanity, in that there is humility. I wonder if you're getting all this. So virtue is order. Brought about without a deliberate thought or intention. And there is great beauty in that.
The final extract in this episode is from Krishnamurti's fourth talk at Brockwood Park in 1976 and is titled Awareness Without Choice.
So we must find out the difference between concentration, awareness, and attention, because these three we are concerned with. Concentration implies to focus one's energy in a particular direction, excluding all other directions, right? I concentrate on a page, on a word, the word near or the word very far away. To concentrate on that demands your energy applied to that one particular thing. Therefore, you are excluding all other things. You are building a wall, a resistance. That is concentration. Then there is awareness, which is fairly simple if you don't give a lot of complications to it. To be aware of the marquee, its shape, the people sitting around you, the color of their dress, to be aware of all this. But that awareness then begins to choose that color better than the other color, to choose what it would like, what it would not like. So, to be aware without choice. You understand? Just to observe the total thing without any choice. I hope you're doing this as we're talking. And there is attention. Attention implies there is no center from which you are attending. When there is a center from which you are attending, that's merely an extension of the center. Right? The center is me or you, and if you are aware from that center, that attention is limited. Right? But there is an attention which has no center. The center exists when there is choice, right? In awareness. Are you following all this? You understand? Concentration, awareness with choice. When there is choice, there is always me, my experience, my knowledge, me, separate from that, from you. That me chooses. Where there is choice, there is me. And therefore, it is still limited. Now we are talking about attention, in which there is no center at all. Therefore, it is if you do it now as you are sitting there, you will see when there is no center, your attention is vast. There is no boundary. And this is necessary because it is necessary so that the brain is now, the mind is now, without choice, completely attentive. completely, with your nerves, with everything. It's completely attentive, and therefore no center. There is no me who says, I am attentive. Now, in that attention, there is silence. Silence which contains this energy, which is no longer discipline.